everyone. I am so excited to be joined today by Mary Whitlock. By background, my name is Doreen Bloch, and I'm the CEO and founder of ELLEMENT, which is focused on empowering people with prenatal, preconception, pregnancy, and postnatal insight for nutrition and supplementation. And so I got connected with Mary through an accelerator program called Humans in the Wild. So shout out to Heather for introducing us. And before we get into starting to talk about today's topic, I want to make sure to read just a quick disclaimer that the topics discussed here today are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. The information is for educational purposes only, and it is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. And so for more information for your personal needs, make sure to speak with a qualified health professional. So with that, Mary, take the stage. Tell us about you and your background.
First of all, I just wanted to thank you, Doreen, for having me here. I'm so honored to speak with you and your community. And yeah, just to get started, a little bit about me and my background. I am a certified health coach and birth worker, doula, and chef here in New York City. I'm in private practice, and in my practice, I work a lot from preconception all the way through postpartum care, specifically focusing on maternal care, holistic healing, and using Ayurveda as a lens in which I work with clients. So it's kind of, I take a more modern, integrating a more modern and traditional approach that's rooted in the elemental principles of Ayurveda. And, you know, a lot of the work that I do is from an educational background, as well as feeding people and nurturing them with my meals. You know, there's a lot to be said about Ayurveda, particularly during preconception. You know, we don't have a lot of time today, so I can't uncover all the hidden gems of Ayurveda and what it is, but Ayurveda is basically a holistic practice that was founded in India over 5,000 years ago. So the tradition is rooted deeply in the culture, and it's also something that's, you know, been existing for this long. There is validity to it, but the basis of Ayurvedic health is having strong ojas, and strong ojas is really, ojas is vitality, and it's what nourishes all of the tissues in your body. And when somebody has strong ojas, their body is able to rejuvenate during times of transition and basically come back to a homeostatic balance. Basically, Ayurveda believes that each individual, if you're supported within your environment, has the ability to take care of itself or heal itself through these times of, you know, life transitions, such as pregnancy, birth, even menopause, fertility, all of these times in our lives. And so, you know, having strong ojas going into preconception, because you are developing an environment in which you are going to create another life, means you need to have strong tissues, strong reproductive fluids, you know, strong plasma, blood levels, all of these membranes and parts of your essential body and makeup needs to be strong and vital. So with that, there's lots of programs or holistic practices that are integrated into the day-to-day for somebody that's looking to start their fertility journey. You know, if the further out you can start and prepare, the better. You know, a year, 6 months would be great, and slowly just integrating more wholesome foods that are easy to digest, as well as different herbal compounds integrated into your diet, taken on a daily basis. And these are things that are going to change from day to day based on where your baseline is at. And something that I just really want to highlight is that Ayurveda, it's not a symptomatic system of medicine. It treats the root cause of disease rather than being diagnostic and treating something at the surface. So it helps individuals mitigate change so that they can achieve balance, but also acknowledges that everybody's baseline for balance is completely different and completely unique. So, so where that's being said, you can give somebody a protocol for what's right for them for pregnancy planning and preconception could be completely different from a regimen for another person. I mean, there's so many factors that come into hand, not just the actual genetic makeup of the individual, but it's also what time of year it is, where the person is located, how old the person is. All of these external environmental factors take into effect how each individual is treated according to the principles of Ayurveda. So I think that was
a great comprehensive
okay
intro. And I also wanted, if you're willing to share with the community about how you started with this journey, how you became a doula. We'd love to hear your story if you're open to sharing.
Yeah, of course. So I, growing up in Brooklyn, my parents were really fundamental in my interest in holistic healing and medicine. I grew up in a spiritual community, attending ashrams at a young age, eating cuisine. Sattvic it's an Ayurvedic style cuisine, traditional to that type of lifestyle, as well as meditation. My father practiced Western herbalism. And so these were some tools that kind of, I had been part of me, by default, just because my parents were, and it was a part of who I was. And so fast forward, I started working in corporate. I was a design director for many years. While I loved that, I finally got to a point where I just felt like I needed to contribute to a bigger community and in a way that was more authentic to myself. And that was, these rich tools that my parents had instilled at me in a young age. And so I naturally just started tending to friends of mine that were going through this time in their life, cooking for them, being with them. Along the same time, I became certified as a health coach, and then I started seeing individuals privately, in any individuals, but particularly I've noticed that more women were being drawn to me, specifically dealing with hormonal issues and mitigating those types of transitions. And so I feel like my practice naturally went toward that direction. And a friend of mine at the time was a practicing birth doula and asked me, she was like, have you heard of postpartum doulas? And I hadn't. And I realized that in a place like New York, all of my friends were going through the fourth trimester feeling very unsupported. And I wanted to kind of contribute to that cause and help find a solution to support more women going through fourth trimester, especially those who are not with their family or didn't have the adequate support to help them to heal during that time. And so that kind of led me on my doula journey. But it also seemed like the natural marriage of my background in Ayurveda and holistic healing and being a health coach with working particularly women looking to conceive or healing from childbirth. So yeah, that led me to going to India. I worked at a natural birthing center along some midwives, some of the leading midwives in the country there, doing birth work, as well as health coaching and studying Ayurveda at a clinic of a long history of family of Vaidhyas. And then Vaidya means Ayurvedic doctor. And then I came back to New York, and about, a couple, it's like going on 4 years now, I started my own practice and have been working on a full spectrum scale, and up until about end of 2009, I stopped attending in-person births, but I'm still coaching moms throughout pregnancy and throughout postpartum and feeding healthy, families, nourishing meals and supporting them postpartum and working one-on-one with clients as well, for any health needs that they might need.
So incredible. I get goosebumps hearing your story. It's just, I remember living that New York life, and I mean, what a transition to make that is just so empowering for all the people that you work with, and helping babies too through that.
Well, yeah, I think that was the biggest, light bulb for me, was that, coming from this place where life is probably the most important thing here. It's why we're all here. And like, how come these moms don't have more support and these babies have more support in the inception of that? Like, priorities, you know, needed to be shifted, and I wanted to help in that and give more attention and care in that time of life. Yeah.
Amazing. So, and that's where, you know, I have to say, I mean, partly in you know, putting together a loose agenda for today, it can feel really challenging, because how do you take 5,000 years of history and into a Zoom call, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm curious your thoughts on, you know, where, you know, I had reached out was really coming from a place of, you know, we have studied at Element. Now it's going to be, you know, nearly 100 prenatal supplement products. And, you know, from the research, it's something like basically 100% of OBGYNs recommend that their patients take a prenatal supplement. And we started to notice that there's a few brands, it's not a lot, but it's like 2 or 3 brands have started to include ashwagandha in the supplement. And so I feel like who better to ask than an Ayurvedic expert around, you know, do you recommend that? What is ashwagandha?
Yeah.
You know, should people look for that in their prenatal?
Yeah. So just off the bat, like we said, you know, I'm not a licensed herbalist, and this is just strongly from my experience and my education. But, you know, when working with clients, I usually take a non-biased approach in that I educate them on the options and, you know, urge them to work with their care practitioners to come up with the best decision for them. And with that being said, you know, going back to that, it's not one size fits all type of method when you're working with Ayurveda. And so you can't really necessarily take one herb and give it to the masses and expect it to have the same effect on everybody. So with that being said, I you know, would definitely urge somebody to definitely, you know, work with their care provider or an Ayurvedic doctor when taking certain herbs, especially something like ashwagandha. But from an herbal perspective and an Ayurvedic perspective, ashwagandha is also regarded as, you know, one of the most important herbs for vital rejuvenation. It is an adaptogenic herb, which means that it's, you know, it's mostly used for rebuilding vitality in an individual. We were talking about ojas before. So ojas is that vitality in a person that builds healthy membranes and tissues and reproductive fluids. And so ashwagandha is probably one of the main herbs used for that purpose in Ayurveda. And, you know, it's similar to that of Siberian ginseng. Ayurveda is also known as being Indian ginseng is another name. And it's interesting because it in Sanskrit, or rather in English, the Sanskrit meaning it means the vitality of horse, which I think is interesting because in Ayurveda, used for reproductive toning, ashwagandha is primarily used for male fertility and to increase semen production. And so that's kind of from the background, but it's also used specifically to help reduce stress. And so as an adaptogen, you know, most adaptogens are recommended you take in the morning to help give you energy and clarity throughout the day. Ashwagandha is different in that you can take it at night to sleep because it helps relax you, as well as you could take it in the morning or the next day in the afternoon. So, you know, it kind of affects people at different places and where they're needed. Ayurveda is also, ashwagandha is also regarded as part of a family of herbs that are rejuvenatives, or you might see like a racina. And what's important to know when taking Ayurvedic herbs in the traditional way, is that the way that the herb is absorbed into your body, it needs to be administered with certain digestive herbs or binders to help process and assimilate. So most traditional racinas or rejuvenatives, they're either the root of the herb, in the case of ashwagandha, is usually ground up and used in a powder, and then It can be administered as a churna, which is basically along with ghee and honey, and you kind of take it as in a paste form.
Delicious, yeah.
Yeah. Or another common use is to take the powder and boil it in some milk and drink it that way. So it's a lot different approach than in the Western pill capsule form.
Yeah.
And the purpose behind it is that ashwagandha is generally heavier in constitution and make, and it's not, people that have a weaker constitution, their digestion or metabolism might not be strong enough to actually break it down and reap the benefits, and it might be doing more harm, putting more stress onto their systems if their system has to work harder to assimilate and break it down, digest it. And so having these different preparations, depending on the individual who's taking it, can help your body break it down. And, I'm not sure if many people know this, but, ashwagandha is also a nightshade, and a lot of people have sensitivities to nightshades. It can promote inflammation, and, so it's just knowing all these little things, especially with, more trendy herbs that are coming to the market. There's a lot of history there and a lot of use, but just understanding the properties and working with a licensed care professional when taking them is probably most beneficial, especially during the time of preconception and pregnancy. Yeah.
That is such an amazing primer, Mary. I've
Okay,
learned so much in the last 5 minutes. And so on that front, I mean, I feel like I have a lot of follow-up questions for you about that.
Please.
I'll just follow kind of the latest thread, which is around, for example, inflammation.
Yeah.
How would you, from a caretaker perspective, know if somebody is showing signs of inflammation to ashwagandha, for example? Is that something that's pretty easy to suss out, or?
I mean, there's so many indications. There can be so many. You would have to be working with somebody on a regular basis, right, in order to know what is going on. The first indication of any issues is digestion. So whether somebody's digestion has changed, and that means their elimination. How many movements they're having throughout the day, has that changed? Is the consistency different? And then another place you can start looking at is the person's skin, if there are any rashes, any bloating, any discomfort, physical discomfort. It really depends on the different constitution of the individual and the different doshas at play. And the doshas are basically a system of, or a combination of elements that are used as a means to help an individual realize if there's something that's, out of balance. That's a whole nother conversation,
Right.
But there's different indications that can a licensed practitioner or doctor will be able to pick up on if a person is out of balance, or rather in excess of a certain element or depleted of a certain element, based on anything new being introduced into their environment, such as an herb or a food or a person even.
Right. True. So when it comes to ashwagandha, it's so interesting that you were sharing that that's often introduced for men. And we always say, of course, it takes, to kind of procreate. So, of course, sometimes various interventions can help in different ways as well. But I guess, tell us more about that. And also I'd love to hear more about, for women, at this stage, is it okay for a given person, as long as they don't have these inflammations or whatnot, to take it at every stage, preconception, during pregnancy, and postnatal?
It's ashwagandha is, yes, it helps build reproductive fluids, specifically semen, but it can also, it's part of a family known of herbs that are galactagogues, basically, and help promote lactation. So yes, postpartum, it can be used. But with that being said, indication, it can be found in breast milk. And if that's something that you want to consider, if your baby's taking it, it really, really should be something that you should be working with a practitioner. And as far as during pregnancy, traditionally, depending on the individual, if this person has a weaker constitution, it can be given to them during pregnancy to help promote strength. With that being said, a person that has a weaker constitution generally would have a weaker digestion. So it needs to be administered in a very precise way, in constructive way, so that their body can break it down and digest it. And that's something that you should probably have, with a care practitioner, be taking it and watching your day-to-day progression. But what's interesting is that, ashwagandha, while it can be taken by both men and women, specifically for fertility and preconception, I feel like the female version of ashwagandha, which or the feminine version of ashwagandha, which you might also be familiar with, is shatavari, which is another Ayurvedic herb, which is getting a lot of
not familiar, but thank you.
hype right now. It's asparagus root.
Got it.
And it's funny. In Sanskrit, the translation in English is who possesses 100 husbands. So it's pretty interesting. So like both of these herbs are also classified as being aphrodisiacs.
Oh wow!
And while ashwagandha tends to be more of a nervine, which means that it can have a more sedative effect and relaxing and calming. Shatavari promotes healthy circulation and blood production, and promotes love and oxytocin, and it's used as well to increase the ojas, and is also considered to be a galactagogue, so it helps stimulate and increase lactation. But it is the main racina or rejuvenative herb used for women, specifically women that are looking for regularity in their menses, preparing for childbirth, as well as women going into menopause and perimenopause. So it's more traditionally used before and after birth, but it's used in the preparation because it helps clear passageways and opens up channels for healthy circulation and blood hemoglobin levels and all of that, and promoting healthy release of oxytocin.
Amazing. Are there any other goodies that we need to know about or that we should talk about that should just be on people's radars?
I think those are the main two. They're both adaptogens, and those I'm sure you're going to start seeing pop up more and more. Regarding female health, women's health in Ayurveda, there's Ashoka, which is another plant that comes from a tree that's also used as a uterine tonic. But Ashoka is used more as like rather than internally, it's used more as like a sitz bath form, and that's used to help regulate menses for women, and good for preparation for fertility and so forth.
Great, that's so helpful.
Yeah.
I'm just pinching myself. I wish that I'd had your guidance when I was going through, especially postnatal. It's such a time that I think the Western world is still catching up with a lot of the science perhaps around what women need after labor and delivery. And I think there's so much that non-Western approaches can teach us and be an inspiration for. And it's especially when it comes to, postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, anxiety, especially with something that I struggled with a lot. And I just think, had I had any kind of strategy, it probably would have been helpful. And I think oftentimes it can be an afterthought. I think, people say, there's so much focus on the baby in those in the fourth trimester. And, when you're pregnant, you're just focused on delivering a healthy baby. And so oftentimes lactation, taking care of yourself in the fourth trimester, it can be an afterthought when it really shouldn't be. And so just any other thoughts or guidance around that?
Yeah, 100%. I think, when we talked the first time, we're talking about how you really self-educated a lot, and that gave you the empowerment to make the best decisions for yourself. And I think with any of this knowledge, to know what your options are, but to also realize, I think a lot of times we give the experts so much more power, and really that power is within. And, Ayurveda, the tools used in Ayurveda it's a holistic process, it's a holistic practice. So it's not just about what you're taking, but it's about how you live your life and like how you take care of yourself and give yourself time to meditate or just hold space for yourself so that you can tune into your intuition, and that you can, you know, when things come up, you'll be able to guide yourself in the direction that's best for you and not for everybody else, but that one that resonates with you. And from a health perspective, that's right for you. I believe that. And I believe that in the time of pregnancy, there's no more, you know, better time that you're connected to these natural cycles and that you're in tune and have that possibility of being in tune to the power that's within. And, you know, when you're pregnant, not only is that your own core power, but you're also connected to the power of your baby. And so when you have that heightened intuition and that ability to nurture yourself, you're also taking on the needs of your child at the same time, and building that connection, I think, is so, and is, you know, in Ayurveda they use the term two-hearted, is essential in the process of birthing and conception. And yeah, it's why part of why I love what I do so much, and this amazing knowledge is, yeah, wonderful. And yeah.
Oh, I feel like that's such a great note to wrap up on. I think that, you know, whereas when I started the conversation, I was hoping to get sort of a yes, no about ashwagandha supplements, should you take them or not? But it is a journey, and it's a journey of self-discovery, and there is no one right answer. And that is ultimately, it feels very full circle, because that is so core to what Element's work is focused on, which is, you know, there is no one right prenatal supplement either. You know, there's what's working best for you, and being empowered and knowledgeable about what your product, any product that you're using, what it has, what it doesn't have, what you should be getting more from your diet, how you can change your diet to really optimize for your health and your baby's health. These things are also interconnected and so personal. And with that, I mean, do you have any other kind of final thoughts? How can we connect with you more? How can people in the audience?
Yeah, you can reach out to me through Instagram at Mary_Whitlock, WHITLOCK, or you can look me up online. My website is www.Mary_Whitlock.com. You could Google me, you'll find me, and yeah, shoot me a note if you have any questions or want to connect. I'd be happy to talk to you. And thank you so much for having me here, Doreen. It's been really nice getting to know you.
Likewise, it's the second of many conversations.
Me too. And I'm so grateful for your comparison chart. I think it's like magical. It's so wonderful. It's going to serve the needs for so many people, and hopefully educate a lot of people that need to be educated, you know, so that they can make those choices for themselves based on what their body needs.
We want to put a spotlight on things that had been so opaque in the past and so confusing and overwhelming. And so thank you. And it's been my honor. Thank you so much for spending the time with us today.
Of course.
Can't wait to connect more soon.
Yes, me too. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.